Hello there. I'm Dr. Autumn, leadership consultant, wellness coach, author, and I'm incredibly grateful to be your host of the Align Living podcast. I'm here to equip you with the tools, inspiration, and practical tips necessary to lead a life of wholeness and pursue greater shalom in your life and that of your families, teams, and communities. My mission is to empower you to lead from a place of holistic well-being. It's time to say peace out to the fatigue, fog, and frustration of living in a place that lacks abundant well-being. Join me as we embark on a comprehensive exploration of spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, social, and economic well-being, all within the comforting embrace of one podcast. Hey, good people. This is Dr. Autumn here, and welcome to the Align Living podcast. And today I am incredibly excited. It is a good day because I have Dr. Reverend Alex Gee on the show today, but more significant to me than that is Dr. Alex has been a friend. Him and his wife become like family to me. He's been a mentor for the last 20 years. And so I am incredibly grateful to have him on the show. And this is going to be fun. I know it is. So I am going to give you a quick little bio intro to Dr. Alex here. But Alex, I just want to say thank you so much for being here with me.
I'm excited about being on your show, Dr. Autumn. You've been talking about this as a concept for some time now, and I love it when things are actualized. So kudos to you and your team for thinking up this podcast and actually moving forward with it. I'm not only proud of you, but I'm excited to be your guest on here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, just a little secret, my intro, hey, good people, that actually is something I took from you, Alex. Like, it's almost like,
oh, that sounds familiar.
It is familiar. It's almost like something I decided to do, like in honor of you and your wife, to be honest, because like you just said, this concept you've been aware of, and I feel like a lot of my dreams and ideas that have come to fruition were like some of those seeds had been planted in the 10 years that I was living in the same city, and attending your church and working with the Community Development Corporation and whatnot. And so that is straight from your playbook of sayings there. So
I love it.
Mm-hmm. So before we jump in, I have so many questions I'm just super excited to ask you because as you all know, Aligned Living is all about this pursuit of wholeness. And specifically, when I started this, part of my vision was to help community leaders who already live such full lives be able to also make sure that we're creating space for our own well-being so that we could show up well. And I feel like you just embody that. And so, but just to give you a little insight, so you know just how busy Alex is in his day-to-day life. And as I tell you a little bit about his bio, I'm just going to relate it to even my personal journey as well. So he is the pastor of Fountain of Life Family Worship Center, which, I'm nearing 40 years old right now. And as a young 18-year-old, that was the church I attended for 10 years before I had to leave that state in pursuit of just some other things. But additionally, as you all have heard me talk about my work in community development and even some of the book that I published, The Playground Leader, a lot of the inspiration for that was because of my work with Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development, which was something that Alex had founded. I don't know, how many years ago was that?
We established Nehemiah in 92, so it's actually been 32 years now.
Wow. That's crazy. That is so crazy. And I had the just blessing and honor of being part of that organization in some capacity for 10 years, but more hands-on for 5. And It was just such an incredible experience. So, and then after I had left Wisconsin, actually, through a series of events, Alex also ended up founding the Justified Anger Initiative, which was followed by his very own podcast, which you have to listen to, Black Like Me. What I love about your podcast, Alex, is like every episode is unique. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to be like challenged. You don't know if you're going to be laughing and challenged. You don't know if you're going
Right.
to be like a fire lit under you to do something. So definitely check that out. And probably like super exciting for me is just has been watching his journey and the newest project, but I'm sure he'll touch on more about. But in this season, which again, is why taking care of yourself and healthy living is so important, because after all of that, now they just broke ground for the Center for Black Excellence and Culture, which is such an amazing project. The vision behind that's incredible. I'll put more information in the show notes, but that's just a nutshell. Of course, his wife and daughter are incredible human beings as well. And yeah, so just to wrap up your bio before I ask you, there's some questions I'm super excited to get your insight on. Dr. G's discovered just how crucial holistic wellness is for living out his calling and making a real impact on others, because for over 40 years as a community leader, he's just come to see how much his own well-being has influenced his ability to lead effectively. And then after going through a personal transformation that improved his physical health and mental focus and spiritual clarity, he found himself with this renewed energy and wisdom needed just to tackle tough issues and, quite frankly, drive some citywide initiatives. So he admits that without prioritizing his own holistic well-being, he wouldn't have been in the right place to lead some of these efforts as successfully. So I just wanted to put that out there as well, because that's really central to some of what we're going to be talking about today. So wouldn't you say, Alex, I got that pretty right?
I think you did your homework. You've been trained well.
Very good. So well, jumping right in, I'm so excited for this. Take us whatever direction you want, but I wanted to ask you, can you just give us a little bit of an overview of what's happening in your life right now? And then follow that up
Mm,
with how you navigate the many demands of your time while staying true to your priorities, okay?
sure. I would say on a personal note, I just turned 60, so certainly thinking about
Oh my.
what convergence looks like, or how do I
Mm,
take my life's experiences and share them with other younger leaders, is very important to me. My wife and I just celebrated our 36th wedding anniversary. We have a 27-year-old
mm,
year old daughter. My mom passed away on the first of this year from complications due to dementia, and my mother in law lives with us. She has since my daughter was born. She was a preemie, and she's been diagnosed as having Alzheimer's as well, Alzheimer's and dementia disease. And so, on a personal note, a lot of that that's what I'm dealing with in my life, in my actual life. My daughter's been struggling with fibromyalgia. That's what the doctors think it is, and a lot of joint pain because of that. Now, in addition to that, or yeah, I guess in addition to that, my work or ministry still continues. I'm the longest serving faith leader in our city. Um, Dr. Autumn talked about the name of our church, Fountain of Life. I'm a podcast host. We're on season 10. We have nearly 200 episodes that are up. I record weekly. I'm in the process of becoming president emeritus of the Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development.
mm.
As I'm preparing to become the CEO or live out being the CEO and founder of the Center for Black Excellence and Culture. So, Autumn, I have all these plates that are spinning on a personal level, but then on a professional level. And I find myself in a very interesting season. Just like I did years ago, as my daughter was going off to college, I noticed my mom's cognitive decline. So it's like, okay, so my baby's growing up and moving out, but then my mother's becoming more like a child in that she can't remember things or can't think very clearly. The being pinched in that space was very unique. And now I feel pinched between stepping away from the day-to-day management of organizations and then taking the reins of a brand new organization. So I'm training my successor while also working to get into the position of running the center and hiring my chief operating officer. So it's a very interesting time of transition. And so though that's just sort of the context from which I work right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how would you say, like, in the midst of all of that, because that is certainly a lot, and actually, as you were talking, I recall just how you've always done a really good job at identify your specific gifts and talents in order to, um, focus on like what you're good at and delegate particular things out and whatnot, just on a professional level. But how do you navigate all of these demands while also staying true to your priorities, right? Like taking care of your health, being a good friend, like showing up in all these other ways. Like how do you do that?
Well, it's understand. Well, let me just start by being transparent. With my mom's passing and my mother-in-law struggles, and my mother-in-law and I are very close. Um, it's difficult, so I feel like I'm having to work even harder, and um, that balance is has slipped away from me a little bit. We'll come back and talk about that later, but I feel that might be important for just the focus of your show, so that I can be the poster dude for when it's working well, but I also understand when things are slightly off. I would say that I work really hard in casting vision so that people, the leaders and the influencers who are part of it, feel that the vision has room for them too. I don't think everyone needs a global vision. I think they need a personal vision, one for their family. But I think a broader vision that's given to some of us who are overseers or big vision people we're given a vision that causes the visions of other people to fit into it. So the vision that I cast out to make accountants and architects and designers and health gurus like yourself think, what's my role in this? Or how do I fit into this? Or how do I grow to network with this? I work to really do that. So I have teams of people who are able to handle the day to day. It hasn't always been that case, but I have people who can really stand in the gap for me. Um, I also know that my major gift is to cast that vision and to care for leaders and to pour into leaders and to encourage leaders. But whenever I get into the details, I mess things up and I anger people because I don't belong in those details. I know how to cast a vision that will galvanize a group of people who can think it through and kick it off. That's my ability. My ability is to bring people together and say, "Hey, have you ever thought about? Have you ever considered?" And so when I stay at that top level and not get down to the granular, I think it helps me a lot. But when I move into new ventures, I've learned that I need a point person who helps to own the process and who keeps things moving even when I can't do it. So I created the podcast with that team. Nehemiah has that team. I created the center with that team. The church has that team. Because when you try to become a global visionary and you don't have people who are holding your already existing organizations, things can come crashing down. So I try to stay within my lane. I try to be the visionary. I don't try to get into the details of the accounting and the marketing. I can influence, but I try to stay out of the granular details, but allow the brilliance of those who have been attracted to the vision to come alive. People have always thought of designing programs, raising money. I seem to attract those people who can help the process to work really, really well. And so I say that those are things that I do. Um, and what I found, and you've helped give me language for this, that if I risk my own health, if I don't build in time for meditation, time for prayer, time for exercise, time for play, it all comes crashing into me. And so the busier I become, the more pedantic I become in wanting to maintain my fun, my playtime, and how I keep balance. Because of working to eat cleaner foods and to eat better and earlier and less and the right kinds of things, I've been able to lose weight. I've been able to be taken off of certain types of meds. But as a result, I'm playing tennis at least 3 days a week. On Saturdays, I play for 4 hours. I do 2 rounds of drills. I usually do 2 drills on Monday nights and one on Wednesdays. I'm meeting new people. I'm getting my heart rate up, but I'm finding that not only is that fun, it is essential because if I become busier but don't find a way to balance that off, um, I become grouchy, um, short sighted, and I'm not in a healthy position to attract others to the beauty of the vision that I have.
Mm. Man, I love that so much. As a matter of fact, you literally hit on like two words that are foundational to all the aligned living stuff that I do because those were like prioritizing, right? So what I find a lot with community leaders who are passionate about their work, right? It's like, I fill my schedule, and then if I have time, well, you're never going to have time, but you've intentionally prioritized creating margin for other things in your life, which I love, because that is like absolutely key. Like you mentioned before, none of us are perfect. We're all on this journey, but if you can at least start with prioritizing some margin, I love that. I also love that you highlighted self-awareness, because if self-awareness as it relates to professional gifts or like personal, just the way that we navigate things, because what that does is it allows us to just like be more effective when we're acknowledging, right? So I love that you touched on that as well. It's so interesting, because a lot of what we've talked about, is around physical health and spiritual formation, but aligned living also touches on social health. And literally how you answered that question, it shouts social wellness from the rooftops. Like, we don't give enough attention. I don't think we give enough attention to social health. Like, you've invested in people and you've poured into people, and empower them. I'm one of those that you did that for. Like, so we don't give enough space to social health in our lives, because that is what you just said, how a lot of these things are also getting accomplished. So that's pretty amazing. I don't know what direction these things are going, but I certainly love that we went there, because we don't talk about
Sure.
that enough.
Well,
So
may I say something, Autumn?
yes. Hmm.
I would say I spent my early years of leadership learning a style of leadership that perhaps worked in the lives of my mentors when they came of age, say in the 30s and 40s, about what leadership was. So in the early days, I thought leadership meant the best demonstration of leadership is that when the leader steps away, things come to a screeching halt.
Mm,
And so initially, as I built up prolific leaders and supportive leaders, when I stepped away and things would enhance or get better in my absence,
mm,
I was hurt by it because I felt like, well, what the heck?
mm,
Like, am I not needed? I mean, people don't like to say stuff like that, but
mm,
I was trained to think things should really screw up when you're gone because that shows you're the leader and you're needed. But then when good happened in my absence, I had to learn to celebrate it because I felt like,
mm,
oh man, they might not need me. So I think leaders need a paradigm, an up to date paradigm of what leadership is, and I think that
mhm,
style of leadership has really been passed along. And so that piece is really important to me, and that I'm investing in people so that they can lead. Um, but that's just very key. So when I step away, I see new twists, new developments. I see people bringing themselves into the leadership process, new ideas and new experiences. That makes me really, really proud because I don't need
mhm,
more of me. I'm a vision caster. I need to see how others see that vision and they play and fold themselves into it. So it's taken me a while to work on the social piece. Also, I've learned not to be threatened by people who are brilliant because just because people are stronger, have better skills or different skills, doesn't mean that they're trying to take me over, take my role, or belittle me. That if I am designed in a particular way, I should be able to attract people with more experience, more resources, um, more years of service, different kinds of talent, greater intellect. And so I love not squelching the process so that people can only come to, let's say, waist high. I need
mm,
people around me who are stars, who are
mm,
just fantastic in carrying out some of this. But many of us as leaders have paradigms that we haven't checked. And so internally we repel and not attract those kinds of leaders.
mm, that is such a good point, because I feel like so much of this, pursuit of aligned living is we're constantly changing narratives, and that narrative around leadership is like a beautiful vision. It's like goosebump worthy. You get goosebumps.
Wow. Wow. I like
So
that.
that's really powerful. So yeah, well, here, think on this a little bit. So I personally, I love when a person can look back and say like, wow, like God was preparing me for such a time as this, when you see those divine
Yeah,
things just like
of
kind of
course. Of course.
lining up. So I would love to know what life experiences you feel have shaped you the most in this journey so far, and specifically because you're right in the middle of this time. How do you think God's prepared you for this project you're working on right now when you kind of look back at your
That's
life journey?
it's a great question. Autumn, people tell us we shouldn't look back. I'm an old runner. I think you might have run track in your day. I can't remember, but I was an
Mhm.
old track runner. Coaches hate it when you look back because you could trip. or run outside your lane and get distracted, or you let your competition know that you're afraid. So there's a part of us in leadership, like you never look back, you always look forward. No, I think we do need to look back to ask ourselves the question you're asking me: what has prepared me for this moment? I'm going to say everything. The tears, the disappointment, being afraid of not making payroll, having people laugh at my ideas, being told, well, if I lived in a different context in a different city, I'd really blossom. You can't really do this in Madison. Black people don't really flourish in Madison. It's not large enough. Um, I think being left out and picked last in gym class, I think being laughed at because I didn't fit in, being a misfit, all of those things help me because much of my work is geared towards people who have felt left out. And people who see me and interact with me now probably don't think that I can relate with a group of people who were bullied and feel left out. That was much of my childhood. And so I think that helped me. Um, Issues of fatherlessness caused me to realize I can't just lick my wounds my whole life. At some point, I've got to find older friends. I've got to find the parental part of God's nature to strengthen and heal me, being solidified and strong male bonding in order to heal those wounds so that I could be a dad to my daughter. I think that helped me being raised by a single mom and knowing lack and food stamps and the embarrassment of commodities or free food has helped me to understand those that I'm serving. Then the good things, education, conferences, um, books that I've written, having ideas and testing the waters and watching those things start, watching people follow me. It's been the good and the bad. People will often talk about the good things that have prepared them, but I mean the negative things. I mean, like the funders who told me that in this market, in this post COVID market, there was no way, and you know what, that I could raise the $31 million that's needed for a debt free, 37,000 square foot cultural center. The very people who said that to me and to my colleagues have come up to me and said, how in the world have you done this? And in a little over 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, I've raised $29 million and only have 2 million more to go to have it for the next year and a half for a completely debt free facility. But it's been those negative experiences, people talking about me behind my back and it comes to me, or people saying things right in my face. They all ready me to say, do I believe this because God said it? Will I disbelieve it because people said it's not feasible? What are we doing here? What are we reaching for? What's my source? What am I about? And so I have found myself gaining strength in those lean years and not because my attitude was I'm going to show them, because sometimes when people said negative things I tended to believe them, but in the midst of hearing all of the negative reports, I would hear something inside saying, but what's my command? What's my mandate for your life? What am I saying? Because if I'm not saying that, that doesn't matter. So what am I saying in your heart? Don't you think I knew that there was going to be a pandemic when I put this in your heart? Don't you think I knew the economy? Don't you think I understood the political landscape? So what are we doing here? What are we going to do? And in the midst of those, I realized I really wanted the vision in my heart. It would have been easier to relinquish it. But in having it, when it's been the most threatened, is when I say, I want this no matter what. And somehow the strength and the faith come to really claw my way out and to fight for those things. But I would say, I've had great mentors. I've had great people that have believed in me. I've had a great faith community that believed that I was a community influencer. I get to serve in a community where I've grown up, so I have some sort of built-in credibility because of my indigeneity. But I would say I learned the most. What prepared me the most for this are the lean places that taught me how to rebuild out of that. So I want people listening to take note from their successes, but take good note from their real and perceived failures, because that can motivate you to do better and do something different. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I wanted to think through that
Yeah,
so that I answered it properly.
for sure. No, that is so, so good. And actually, ironically, it's wildly relatable for me. And two things jumped out at me pretty significantly. So when you talk about even like starting as a young person, um, resilience is such an important characteristic that we don't talk enough about, and that, it sounds to me, was really formed early on. And, like I had mentioned, my time with Nehemiah, I worked with youth and under your leadership, Dr. Alex. And then, recently I wrote the book, The Playground Leader. And I actually, in one of those chapters, talked about resilience in depth because, like, if that is such a characteristic, if people could form that in our hearts early on, like that obviously has played a significant role in your journey because you were told you were a leader at a young age, and that's a big passion of mine. And so I love that so much. And when we put God first, which you're such an example of, I feel like in those seasons of struggle we get to see God in new ways. Because as you know, like in my life, like some of my most stressful, you know, times of struggle and challenge has been like recently. And what's so beautiful about it is although I grew up with this, beautiful faith, I thank God for, I got to see God in new ways, and I allowed it to fuel me. And so I feel like I'm hearing you say that as well, which is again
Yes.
such an incredible thing. So I love it. I love it. Okay, so well, kind of taking a little bit of a turn from like navigating struggle. You're in this exciting season of life and you're not slowing down.
No, no, I'm not.
So I remember you saying to me one time, like, I don't know what I should call them, like Geisms. Is that a thing out there? Geisms?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Jesus on my website.
Okay, because I could think of so many that I've heard you say, even just directly related to my work. But I remember one time you saying when the body is out of sync and you're in this perpetual motion, it's like being on a hamster wheel. And I think that people often feel this way, like you're like in motion, but you're just not going anywhere. And I would love for you to kind of expand on like, what did you mean by that? And like, what are some things people could do to get out of that place? You
Yes.
remember saying this?
No, I do. It's so funny. Sometimes I'll read my Geisms. A
Uh-huh.
person will share it, and I will think that is so wise, or wow, that is so hip. And then someone will say, you wrote that, right? You know that's you." So I'm listening to that, thinking, "Wow, that was really shrewd." Oh shoot, I wrote that. Okay, let me remember that. What happens is, um, as a leader, there's always an opportunity to serve. We're not short of needs. We're not short of. What I mean is that we're not short of there being needs in our community. But if we don't balance that with our self care, we really can't help others move ahead because you have to create the propensity inside you to respond to a need. Like you can't just run into a fire without having gear. You can't jump on out of a plane without having gear. You can't go to war without a gear. But yet, in our own sort of emotionally naked lives, we jump into fires and out of planes and we chase ambulances trying to help others, trying to grow companies, trying to take care of families, but we treat prayer or quiet or exercise or eating better as something that helps if we get around to it.
Mm,
Yet, what we prioritize um, is it it is strengthened by our need to care for ourselves.
mm,
So, if I'm not mentally in tune, spiritually in tune, physically in shape, my busyness seems to get me nowhere. The hamster wheel is moving, but I don't know that I'm really moving organizations because organizations and communities aren't moved by my busyness, they're moved by my influence. And
mm,
influence is an energy that comes from my ability to connect with my deeper purpose and the God that gives that to me.
mm,
But if I'm so busy driving from point A to point B that I never get a tune up and I never get gas and I never air my tires, the more I do that, the less likely I am in reaching point B. We just know
mm,
that it just won't happen.
mhm,
Yet in our lives, we can decide to not fuel up, not change our oil, never look under our hood, never rotate our tires, never change a timing belt, never put filters in, never change fluids, and think that we're going to arrive on time and in good shape, and that the car is going to
mm.
reserve its value. So why do we care or take better care of our vehicles, of our possessions, than we do ourselves? Because if we're not
Mm-hmm.
well, we can't drive, and it doesn't matter if we have a car or not. It doesn't matter if we have an organization or not. If we're not well emotionally and mentally, so for me, I'm too old and have too much experience to be on a hamster treadmill to have all this motion, but really go nowhere. I'm at a point where I want to see traction, but traction doesn't come from more fervent energy. Traction comes from stepping aside from the fervent energy. It's why, the scripture says, be still. Know that I'm God, that it is in stillness that we observe. It is in stillness. Our cars are not moving when we get gas. They come to a complete stop. It's in park. We get out the car. We should turn it off. But it's in a stop motion that it's hoisted up and the tires are changed. Like it's stopped. You're not in it. You're waiting in the lobby. Like it's not moving and getting checked. We're trying to move and get fuel. We're trying to move and get fluids. It doesn't work. And so we have
Mm-hmm.
to actually realize it's important
Mm-hmm.
because either we're going to slow down and do this now, or we're going to have to take our cars in for something really serious. So we take care of these small little things.
Or
So,
crash and burn.
yes, we crash and burn. And I also found this out, Autumn, particularly this year with my mom passing on New Year's Day, is that I had a balance routine or rhythm. I don't know how much at my age balance is a thing. I do focus on rhythm. So what's the rhythmic reality so that my life has some give and some take, some yin and some yang, some bounce and some dips. Like how do I keep things moving in a way that's happy and it's flowing together. So I look for a rhythm. Rather than a balance where I do this for 3 hours, this for 4 hours, that just doesn't work with my temperament style or my life. But what I found was that my level of exercise or relaxation helped me to be healthy, eat better, and run the organizations that I was running. But then when my mom passed away, that's a whole nother reality that requires a foundation that was greater than what I needed to just run the podcast, the church, the center, and Nehemiah. But because I'd only prepared myself at that level, I had a real imbalance because I hadn't gone deeper in my self care time. Again, I was doing enough to maintain what I was outputting with work. But when I add the loss of a very dear mom, I tell people I'm a 60-year-old mama's boy, that was a sucker punch. And although I knew she was ill and had dementia, we were not expecting my mom to pass away the day that she did. Um, and so I'm having to find a way to now add new streams of exercise. Is it tennis and Peloton? Or, I'm thinking in September, do I want to start walking? I'm at the age where I want to do some resistance work. So do I do some light weight stuff? But I'm having to think about how to balance this because when I was on vacation, my family goes out of the country every year for 2 weeks, turn off my phones. My computer has a message saying, not only I'm out, don't leave a message because I'm going to delete it. My phone says I'm not going to listen to these messages, so please call my assistant. So I try to make it very clear, and then my teams are able to carry things. But Autumn, I won't even. I'm too. I would not even tell you at this point. I'm not going to say on the record how high my blood pressure was, but I will say this: my blood pressure was way lower than that a couple years ago when my doctor sent me to my first hospital stay since my birth to regulate things. Had I been in the States, I would not have been able to go on the vacation because I would have been in the hospital because of the readings I had. And I think it's because I hadn't prepared enough room. And so what I was experiencing with my mom was toppling things. And so now I'm having to step up to start adding some more of that space because work doesn't slow down, life doesn't slow down. Then I'm even asking my own body, why are you moving slowly? Why are you lacking energy? What's going on? So I just want people to know you have to not only build space for where you are, but you've also got to build capacity for where you're going or for what might happen. Because I didn't have any leeway, any margin, and my mom's passing took a very, very tough toll on me mentally, emotionally, in terms of stress and anxiety. But I'm glad I had some process of self care. Because had I been at the base I was at 3 or 4 years ago, what I experienced could have been fatal.
Wow. Yeah, and like if there's like that is going to be in the top three things for people to take away from this podcast episode here is like build the foundation when you feel like everything's good, because you have to be prepared.
Right.
It's like get in the rhythms, the habits, the routines now, because life will happen. Like we
Yes.
do face challenges, and so holistically, like that is such an important reminder. And thank you for sharing, being vulnerable, sharing that part of your story. I guess like kind of related, I would love to ask you, and take this whatever direction you want, spiritually, physically, mentally, like any aspect of wellness. Like what are some warning signs that you noticed, or even your personal life, or even just working with so many leaders, before reaching like a significant turning point in your wellness journey? So I guess in general, or you could speak specifically, or in general, in other words, what can people just, maybe they're kind of on that hamster wheel, and what are some kind of like red flags, like, man, like I really need to get this together right now, before I get into like too much of a bad spot? Do you see what I'm saying? Does that
I
make
do.
sense?
I do.
Okay.
I say a couple of them. If you don't have a um, general practitioner, if you do not have a doctor, that's a sign. If you don't do annual physicals, you don't know what's happening in your body. So you have all these plans, and dead people complete no tasks. So
Mhm.
I'm just saying, I know that sounds very basic, but I know folks who just don't have doctors. They don't do follow-ups, they don't do the annual checks, so you don't know what's going on inside of you, because your blood pressure reading, your sugar, your cholesterol, all of those could be indications of what's not going on well, and you may not even feel badly. So you need to know, I did not feel like my blood pressure was as bad as it was. I felt fine. And so I was in a situation, Autumn, where I went in for a dental procedure, and they stopped, turned off the gas, did not give me the Novocaine shots because they said my blood pressure was too high and I was
Mhm.
at risk, and they would not do a procedure on me and
Mhm.
sent me out. I've never been turned away from an appointment. They
Mhm.
turned down my insurance money because they said,
Mhm.
we're not going to give you medicine that could make your heart race. That was a
Mhm.
huge wake up call, and I went straight to urgent care. I almost went home to sleep it off because I was afraid. I went
Mhm.
to urgent care to start this process. Others is when you're always on edge.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's it. When you're not taking time to eat well, and you notice that you're picking up weight, you got to that's key. When you begin to feel or tell yourself no one understands your burden, no one understands your pressure, no one understands your marital status, no one understands your finances, and so you become alienated, that's a huge sign. And when your emotions get out of whack, either
Mhm.
you're numb and can't feel anything, or you feel everything, or you're always angry. I think, there's this how does this there's this thing that's called halt. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, any one of those is a sort of a sign that you need to slow down and eat something, or rest, or
Mhm.
or adjust.
Mhm.
But for me, I felt always anxious because I felt so behind in stuff. And when you feel that way,
Mhm.
hardest thing to do is to slow down, to try to do some self-care. So I would say, if I'm talking to someone and if they have plans and dreams, and I say, okay, this is really great. What's your doctor's name? If they say, well, I don't really have one, I don't want to hear anything they've got to say about the plan. I really
Mhm.
don't. When's the last time you've
Mhm.
seen your doctor? Well, it's been hard. Don't want to hear anything. I want, because you make time to get your car checked up, to go get a haircut, to do these other kinds of things, to go shopping, to
Mhm.
go grocery shopping, you go out to eat. Those are some of the things that I really see. But the isolation and the loneliness, the
Mhm.
anxiety, the sleepiness, the overeating, the
Mhm.
undereating, those are all signs that people are out of balance. And also a lack, and I'll just bring this faith piece into it,
Mhm.
a lack of interaction with God, the lack of any space for spirituality and spiritual reflection. When you
Mhm.
lose that, you lose the ability to imagine
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
create.
Mhm.
And we were made to imagine and create. And when we
Mhm.
lose those outlets, it's almost like our souls become constipated. There's no outlet, and
Mhm.
that's a very dangerous sign, warning sign.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I'm going to ask you to go a little bit deeper on the spiritual front for the last question I wanted to ask you. But, just to add to what you were saying, it's like we make time for what's important, right? So I would say, like, even, just cooking healthy food. Like I feel like that's one of the most difficult things for people who are busy to justify, but probably in my opinion one of the very most important things is just to make time to eat healthy whole foods, right? Like,
Right.
and like you said, like making time to like know your numbers, know where your health is at. Like we make time for all these other things. Just in my experience working with leaders and health coaching and whatnot, it's like that is one of the things that's like, let's make time for it. And
Autumn, I think
so
people are afraid it's not going to taste good and they won't be satisfied. I think a lot of us have a very unhealthy relationship with foods.
mm,
And it's easier to justify business and eating something that's absolutely killing us, but it tastes good or satisfying than it is to then take the time to cook something that may not be the most fulfilling, but your body is really loving it and like really craving it. Like I made something with spinach the other day. I sauteed spinach and put some other stuff in it. I kept thinking about it that night and the next day, and I thought my body must have needed iron or needed that because it's like this craving that's
mm,
inside. If we give our body junk, it will crave junk, and if we give it good and clean, it will crave good and clean.
mm.
We are responsible for that reset.
As a matter of fact, there's another Gism right there. I specifically remember you saying at some point, I don't know, I was must have been in my 20s because I was still attending a Fountain
Hmm.
of Life, but you said nothing tastes as good as healthy feels.
Right,
Nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. Although healthy food can taste incredibly good, you just
right,
got to give
right.
yourself some
Sometimes it's an
time.
acquired taste,
But yeah,
or it takes
so
time to do it. But those are really important things. And I just feel again, what I really appreciate about your work is that you bring that all back together. Because I think for leaders, we think that our skill, our charisma will carry us. But many of my friends who are pastors have degenerative diseases,
mm,
whether it's heart trouble, diabetes trouble, cholesterol, which is heart trouble, and it's in their families. And
mm,
many have had heart attacks or been hospitalized, or just not healthy or are overweight and obese. And we have all these dreams of doing great things in the community, but our bodies can't sustain it.
mm,
And I have dreams. I think I can work another 15, 20 years. I don't want to do it full time, but I want to train leaders. I want to create institutes. I want to teach
mm,
people what I know and show them what I've done. But what can come in the way is not racist folks or the lack of funding or the right or the wrong administrative administration in the White House, or angry neighbors. It's how I take care of my health.
hmm. For sure. For sure. At that institute, I think you need a course in aligned living, and I think I could teach it pretty well. I'm just kidding.
I think you're right. I think you darn well.
So just wrapping up here because this is it's too long to be a geism, but it was an analogy. I love analogies, and now that I think about it, I'm having this in real time aha moment that I wonder if my love for analogies came from listening to you preach sermons with analogies for 10
Love
years.
technology, yes.
I love a good analogy. So I'm always coming up with my own. But you had said something actually when I talked to you during my dissertation research. And I'm going to tell you what you said. And then I would love for you to specifically speak to how our spiritual formation needs to inform these other areas of life. So I this last question I'm gonna ask you specific to expand on that because like I think your relationship with God, you have such a level of like spiritual wisdom in your faith and just letting Jesus lead your life. So okay, so here's the analogy. This is what you said, and I think it's pretty brilliant. We are more integrated than we give ourselves credit for. We are integrated beings. Years ago, I preached about this concept using an analogy of sawdust. If I were to work on wood in my office, you will most certainly find sawdust downstairs, in the hallway, in bathrooms, and so forth. The rooms are connected by openings in the floor and heating and cooling ducts, etc. So, if we don't acknowledge the interconnectedness of human beings as a reality, we're fooling ourselves. People often try to pursue excellence in one area of wellness, but then they become top heavy and they can't achieve excellence in just that one area, but need to consider all areas of wellness. Okay. So that was your analogy. That's like spot
Wow.
on. Like that is my
Wow.
message. Okay. So what I want you to expand upon as we wrap up here, specifically as we consider our integrated nature, like why must we let our faith inform these other areas of wellness? Like, how do we do that? Why? Like, however you want to take this question, that's exactly how I want to wrap up here.
Sure. I I would say if we believe that our lives have a similar interconnectedness, as does rooms in a house or a church that are connected by events. Um, I don't know that faith needs to inform it. When my doctor said go to the hospital, when I tested my blood pressure, called his nurse to say what the reading was, she said, "Let me check with your doctor." She called back and said, "He said go straight to the emergency room."
Hmm.
That wasn't an act of faith. That was obeying my physician, but it made me ask spiritual questions. What's going on that food and stress have become so dominant in my life? What role has faith played? Not in making it happen, but the absence of faith. How did my faith allow this to take place? So with the interconnection, it doesn't matter where it starts. Wholeness may bring people to faith, and faith might bring people to wholeness. But because it's connected, I think we need to start with whatever it's wherever we're spoken to and follow it. So, for example, if a person wants to pursue faith, then I think discipleship has got to talk about how we treat our bodies, our wellness, our rest. I think that's very important. But I also think that people who are looking to be entrepreneurial and successfully in their leadership and in their philanthropy, they've got to understand the importance of giving back to the community. And so that's just a long way of saying because it's connected, I really don't care where people start as long as they are taught that it's all connected. Because when I go through a drought like I'm currently coming out of, I feel like I'm coming out of it from my mom's passing. Um, the physical movement seems to have a spiritual implication. I try to do something that I read. I think read about something about this in Soong-Chan Ra's, Dr. Soong-Chan Ra's book about, I can't remember he's got so many, but where he was talking about this Native American brother who faced the East when he prayed. Like, I never heard of that. Like, well, like what is that? Like, what does that do? But I now do that because there's something about seeing the sun in the morning reminds me of the faithfulness of God, that there's a system. It comes up and things happen, then it goes down and things happen. Like there's this system, there's this balance, and it helps to control and add rhythms to the ecosystems. But for me to realize I'm a part of that ecosystem, I'm part of this larger system, and because it's got checks and balances and ups and downs and ins and out and full moon and half moon and crescent, I'm more integrated, I'm more connected than I give myself credit for. So nature speaks to me, rest speaks to me, exercise speaks to me. And when those realities come, I have more of a spiritual awakening. Then that spiritual awakening gives me the discipline to eat better, prepare better, spend differently, and make decisions about how I take care of my body and how I interact with each other, and realize that I can't truly be given to my calling or truly available to God if I'm not thinking about these other kinds of things. And so, what's the best way to enjoy the outdoors? Walk, run, hike, bike, be outside, not in my car, not in my house, because that beauty speaks to me. And then when I sleep, it makes me sleep and rest better when I'm exercising. Well, rest is one of the things that can help blood pressure. And then when I'm restful and I'm energized, I have the capacity to hear what's happening spiritually and then to share those with people around me. And so it's so rhythmic and it's so interconnected. Um, but once you realize, again, just to stress, once you realize how interconnected that is, I don't think that it has to start with faith. But I have found that when I'm out of balance, I don't jumpstart faith with a Bible study. I jumpstart faith with exercise and eating differently. And I have these aha and these spiritual moments that kickstart my faith. And then the kickstarted faith helps me to be more diligent in the other areas. And so that's how it typically works inside my life.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. As a matter of fact, like in probably one of the busiest, most stressful seasons of my life, I prioritized walking outside. And I heard God's voice so clearly so many times because I'm like, this is double dipping, right? It's like good for your mental health to be in nature. And then I'm also walking and getting steps in. But like I would hear God's voice so clearly in those
Thank you.
moments telling me things. So I love all that. Like as we wrap up, I'm going to share with listeners Coach Autumn's tip for the day. And then I'm going to ask people where they could find you and whatever you want to bring awareness to because there's so many different things going
Sure.
on. But I do want to say thank you so much for taking time to be on the show today. Like, obviously, I do not take this for granted. You have so many things that you're doing right now. And to be honest, I was like pretty darn happy all day up until this interview because honestly, like, talking to you, reflecting on, my time, it was probably from 18 years old to 28 where, I was pretty hands on with you and Jackie, the things that were happening in the community.
Hmm.
And it was such a nostalgic time for me because everything that I've done since then has some sort of seeds that were planted during that time. So I want you to know, like in all my work, whether it was publishing of my book or the volunteer stuff I do here in community development or like my line living business, like in some way I could tie it back to some roots during that time.
Wow.
So it's just so nostalgic for me reflecting on this time and it's literally I was thinking about another analogy. It's like listening. It's like to me like I'm in a coffee shop and all of a sudden they start playing 90s music. Okay, that's just like super nostalgic. It's this happy place, and that's literally like how I feel
Wow.
right now.
I love.
so thank you so much, and I appreciate. I just want to say like how you walk in obedience to the Holy Spirit, how you elevate your amazing wife Jackie, who's always behind the scenes grinding things out. I respect your marriage, I respect your guys' prayer life, and I appreciate how you value friendship, how you take risks because God has called you to do something. Like one of the really cool things about your work that I think, I'll encourage listeners to take note of is you knew something specific that you wanted, like a particular cause or mission or purpose that you specifically wanted to stand on, and you didn't sway from that. You're like, I'm called to impact, you know, this population, this space, and you stayed really focused on it. You didn't, sway from that because of like, funding or what people were saying or anything. You were just really focused on that. And I think that plays a part into some of the
Mhm.
success that you're seeing today. So I just want to thank you for all that. And I can't
Wow.
wait to see how God continues to use you and just keep up the good work. So before you share with listeners where they could find you, I'm actually changing things up right now because for Coach Autumn's practice of the day, because practice does not make perfect, it makes permanent. Okay. So the practice, I want to encourage you, if you haven't, to all the listeners here, is to have people in your life that challenge you, maybe make you feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, that they elevate you. They're not, have people in your life that aren't just going to say yes or make you feel good when you're in your feelings, but they're going to push you to be better and do better. And that's my tip of the day because I was actually, interestingly, being interviewed by a different podcast host, and they were asking me about my time in community development. And I said, what was really special about that is, let's say, I think it was like 22 at the time, I was given leadership by you, Dr. Alex. I was given leadership and I felt so empowered to go out. Like, you want to make that happen? Like, go create those partnerships. And I wasn't, look, there's a verse in Second Timothy about this. Like, don't let people look down on you because you were young. And I feel like so much of who I am today was because I was given space to just walk in my leadership and felt empowered to go make things happen.
Wow.
And I rose to the occasion. I rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, that is my tip. And this has been a really wonderful time. Where can people find you?
People can find my podcast at alexg.com. That's my name, ALEXGEE.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. People can find me under Alexander G. I have a Dr. Alex G Facebook page. And my podcast is, again, Black Like Me. And you can find that Black Like Me podcast on any of our platforms. If you Google or if you just go to social media and look for The Black Center, you'll find information for the Center for Black Excellence and Culture. That's also the website, theblackcenter.org. So from there, you can click around to see the various things that I'm working on, and I would love to engage people through those sites.
Absolutely. And I'll put that all in the show notes. But if you like take a peek at the Black Center website, just even to feel inspired by like a very like innovative, cool vision that has so many parts. Like, I love when things like have multiple benefits and overlapping purposes. And so I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. But, anyways, it has been fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Dr. Alex, for spending the last almost hour with me.
It was my pleasure, and I hope you have me on again sometime. So thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
All right, I'm proud of you. Keep up this great work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Aligned Living Podcast. I'm Dr. Autumn, your guide on this journey to shalom or wholeness. Ready to embark on this journey of self-discovery and transformation? Head over to autumnswain.com to learn more and to dive deeper into the world of aligned living. Until next time, stay aligned.